It's a beautiful day and good to have you on Atlantic Television Network Blowout Show, which is a syndicated live program of the network where we hold conversation on special interest topics. We bring you news, events, and stories through correspondent reports, expert opinions, and stakeholders analysis. Our first point of call this morning is an anchor's chat. Police Service Commission retire erring DIGs for breaking command tradition. In Bayelsa State, Reps Caucus accuse police of killings in Nembe. In National Assembly, we have a speaker who's suing for peace dialogue between farmers and herders. And in corruption, Reps uncover serial mismanagement of mass transit funds. And on anti-open grazing, Mieti Allah appeals for alternative grazing zones. And in the economy, PDP blames President Tinubu for crippling economic policies. On ministerial appointment, Musawa as serving court member not qualified to be minister. This is coming from justices of the Supreme Court. In governance, President Tinubu urges ministers on implementation of agenda. Our resource person on the show this morning, the Constitution man himself, Barrister Asim Adams. But we'll take a short break. We'll come back, we'll bring you an cost chart and quickly bring you up to date on the issues we have for you today. Stay with us. We'll be back to you after the break.
From the line across the ocean to the land beyond the mountains, through the Sahara, we bring.
Every day, our lives are changed by history.
We are one people, all of us.
Leaders, politics.
Nobody's ambition is what's the blood.
I have fought very firmly.
Natural occurrence, war, and the world economy.
I belong to everybody, and I belong to nobody.
ATN covers it all on ATN Politics today.
welcome back to ATM Blowout, everyone. And it's time for Anchor's Chat. So, the Police Service Commission has ordered 4 Senior Deputy Inspectors General of Police, Dan Malam Mohammed, Moses Jizipo, Hafiz Inua, and Adeleke Bode to immediately proceed on compulsory retirement for failing to retire following the appointment of their colleague, Olukayode Tsakona, as the Acting Inspector General of Police. The Police Service Commission, however, approved the appointment of 4 Assistant Inspectors General of Police, Ibrahim Kaoje, Daniel Sukari Pedro, Ayuba Ekweji, and Usman Nagogo to the rank of DIGs pending ratification by the Board of Commission to replace the retired DIGs. The spokesperson for the Commission, Ikechukwu Ani, who disclosed this to journalists in Abuja on Monday, noted that the Police Service Commission gave the order in the exercise of its statutory powers pursuant to the 3rd schedule, Part 1M, paragraph A and B of the 1999 Constitution, reinforced with the section of Police Service Commission Act 2001 on appointment. And he said in the wake of the appointment of the Acting Inspector General of Police, Kayode Gbatikun, on June 19, 2023 by the Mr. President, the Commission had expected, in consonance with the revered tradition of discipline and regimented culture of the Nigerian police force, that those DIGs who were seniors in rank prior to his elevation will voluntarily apply for retirement or elect to leave the force. The Commission, having waited for ample time with no such application for any of them took the decision to compulsorily retire them in order to uphold discipline, which is the bedrock of the force, and to discourage the status reversal, which is inherently inimical to the exercise of authority by the Inspector General of Police. The newly appointed DIGs are without pending disciplinary matters and or without any serious medical conditions and health impairments, according to ANI, were drawn from the same respective geopolitical regions of the retired ones. All right, there's nothing much to say here other than to say, yes, rules should be rules, rules should be respected. But again, there are certain rights that people have. It's like telling them because their mates, their pair, has been elevated to the position of IGP, IG of Police, Inspector General of Police, they have to compulsorily retire. We have a lawyer in the house. Maybe when we get into that, I'll get to ask him, what about the rights of these people? Because if their pair, who is the IGP, is still serving, and now the law says that they have to retire. I'm not saying that the law should be changed for them, but some of these things should actually be looked at. Because right now you're talking about them as people who are being rebellious, maybe recalcitrant, if you may, to existing rules, because they were meant to retire on the appointment of Kayode Gbatikun and all of that, But what about their rights? What about, I mean, that's their pair. You're basically forcing them to retire when, in actual sense, maybe there's not the due age of retirement. I do not think Gbatikun is up to 65, which was a point we were told the former IG was ought to have retired from service. I mean, I'm just wondering, is there no other way to make this make sense? Like, okay, maybe they are not made. The rule says if your pair, it becomes IG, every other person around you also to say may have to resign. But what about the case? I'm just thinking, couldn't there have been a way to assign them to a different duty that also makes them comfortable? I mean, how do you pick up someone again? Is if Kayode Gbatikun is the most senior police officer, for instance, is understandable. What if he's not the most senior? What if there are other people who ought to? I mean, there may not be any hard and fast rule, but I think sometimes these rules ought to be looked at, because if you're just saying because they should know in consonance with the Act, Police Service Act, they should retire. Yeah, but what if they have issues that they are not comfortable with? Did anybody actually find out why those issues? I'm not saying they should break the laws or the rules of engagement and also expect their rights to be made. That's not what I'm saying. I mean, they knew all of this before they got into office. But instead of making it look like these men you're mentioning their name in the news right now are rebellious to the Nigerian police force, they're forcing them into retirement, I honestly believe that even without bringing it to the news, they ought to be aware of, putting it out there so it to have some sort of a human face. Trust me, any law or rule that lacks a human face, that lacks that humane aspect of it, at some point it's bound to, check the system automatically. And that may just be what the police service is experiencing right now, because if these laws on their own are not able to, provide the requisite rights of these individuals that have served the Nigerian police force. Come on, let's say at a certain age that is not even the age of retirement, I happen to have one who knows me that have come to power as a president, and he decides to say, because I've served the team so, and I've gotten to the rank of so, I should automatically become the IG of police. But by that way, I'm also going to my peers whom these rules affect, their rights are going to be denied. That few months they would have enjoyed to their actual retirement age, said 65, Abby? Okay. We have a lawyer in the house. He could get to educate us more on that. That few points, so that feeling of denial, that feeling of not having what is due them, that, all of this should be put into consideration. Reeling out their names and saying, oh, how they are rebellious, they ought to have resigned in consonance with the existing laws. Come on, is it because you're not wearing the shoes? When you begin to wear these shoes, because I believe that, maybe we know how you feel, I believe that as we make progress in the human race, a whole lot changes. You remember when they used to kill twins because they thought they were evil? There's so many rules that we abide to out of ignorance that today are beginning to change. I also believe that this issue around the retirement processes of the senior Nigerian police officers should also be looked into again. I know it hasn't been long they looked into them. They can also, there's nothing wrong with that. They can actually apply to the legislators for them to begin to look at these things and see how they can begin to give it a better fitting, especially when issues like this come up, instead of just coming to tell us, oh, these people were rebellious, and that's why, well, these are their names, these are the new people. And again, honestly, these men, if they have served you faithfully all these years, without bringing a bad reputation to the Nigerian police and all of that, the much you could actually accord them is that in-house roundtable, resolve this issue, and then amicably ease them out, and not make it look like people that have given their life to serve the country for as long as they have suddenly became the enemies of the state, which is basically what this portends, the way the Nigerian police is basically pushing this across. And that may not be the intent, but that is what the human part of everyone is there. And sometimes when this thing happens, they begin to look at it from that angle. And instead of getting to the point where people begin to rebel against the system, if there is one, then it's important to say, yes, this is the standard of operation. This is how this is based, but because how we got to that point for certain individuals may not seem fair, why don't you look for a way of giving it a human face? Yes, you have done this is past, but we hope that somehow the Nigerian police can look at other issues around here and begin to give it a better human face. And sometimes these are not criminals, for instance. They are not wanted criminals. They are not people we should know. Oh, there's no point disgracing them, bringing this in public domain. If you hadn't said this, a lot of us are not even aware that there are these people who are serving and you want them to retire. You could actually amicably have a conversation with them, retire them amicably, and then, just announce that this is what has happened. Even just announce new AIG in line with the protocols of the Nigerian Police Act and all of that. So, but my thing is, these people have families, these people have loved ones, they have people that have looked up to them all this while. And of course, when you treat senior officers like this, what are you telling to their subordinates? What are you telling to the junior or saying to the junior officers? Sometimes it could be that there are some personal needs. I'm not saying that their personal needs should override existing laws, no. But sometimes, primarily give a human face to some of these laws. Make it okay for people to know that, oh, this is what it is. So flashing their names and telling us, or their faces, these people have to go because they didn't follow the laid-down tradition that they should resign when their superior or their peer comes to power as the IGP. I don't think sometimes this information are meant for us. I think that's why you have the Police Service Commission, and then you have the ministry, Police Service Ministry, or what have you. So all of this should actually be a kind of an internal affair. Have a way of giving it a human face. Celebrate these men particularly, because whether you like it or not, retiring people from their position when maybe it didn't follow the normal process, but because someone came to power and the rule says if this happened, this is what will happen. Yeah, understand that they are humans. They may be hurt at some point. So find a way to give the human face, celebrate them. If they have served, the thank you will tell them for their service is not to throw them in the public like, oh, they've committed a crime. Well, maybe according to the rules, but it's not a crime that affects Nigerians per se, as per the public. It's something within your internal management, something you could have managed internally as a commission, and then leave us out of that. Let us see you celebrate this and tell us the good works they have done. I don't even know if I've actually seen our officers who are retiring or who have been given ranks being celebrated in this country. Now, come to think of it, because 2 years ago, last year, we're celebrating a Nigerian military lady who served in the military, who was being celebrated, and the whole world watched this. It was last year, we carried that. So come to think of it, do we actually have a time when we could say this police officer, this military general, this general, or retired from the military, and we are celebrating them for their good works? All I'm saying is, good, you have, and fine, you have to do what you need to do because that is an existing rule or the tradition, if you may, that they ought to follow, but don't make it messy. Give it a facelift, make it easy for everyone to actually enjoy the process of how these people serve and ease them out honorably, irrespective of the wranglings or the misunderstanding that is going on with the commission. But that's how much we can do on Anchor's Chat. We'll be right back to you in a bit for the rest of our stories today. Stay with us. Welcome back to ATM Blowout, everyone, and it's time to blow out on the rest of the issues we have in the news for you. But before that, I would like to welcome the Constitution man himself, and that's none other than Barrister Asim Adams. Good to have you on ATM Blowout today.
Good morning to you, my sister Vivian. Good morning,
and now, everyone, this is where we take off this morning. But before we get into Bielsa State, I was just talking about the Police Service Commission. Some of these rules, do you think there is a way they could actually give it a human face? I'm not a lawyer, you're the lawyer, but I'm just speaking as a human here, to make it look okay for people to understand, especially when situations like the one that we're discussing comes up, where maybe because their pair or the most senior gets into office, they are now forced to retire, not because they've actually gotten to the actual age of retirement.
The point is this, the moment you use the word forced retirement, it now becomes an anathema. That is something that is incongruent with the law. Because the word forced retirement. Now, the only area forced retirement, could apply here is if the person has a medical condition as an officer that has made him not to perform his duties, very, very well, then he can be asked to, ease off so that he can go and take care of himself or herself. The other one is if there is, if he's found wanting for corruption, misdemeanor or some other offenses within the in-house police and against the country, etc., the person can be forced to retire. Now, arbitrarily retiring people, like it has been happening in the police force, for me, is an illegal contraption and use, of system and words. Happily, I listened to or read what they were talking about, that it was as a result of the police tradition. The police, the tradition. So not the law. Said the tradition, the command, police command, tradition. which is not the law. So at the end of the day, you find out that what does that mean is that it has been a tradition, that whenever, an acting IG is appointed or maybe selected, the others in the same rank with him, has to bow out. That is their tradition. But from, I went to the Police Act. The police is a creation of the Constitution. Nigeria Police was created under Section 214 of the 1999 Constitution. The Police Service Commission is a creation of the Police Act, which I believe what they put there is that they are to take care of discipline, remuneration, etc. of the police people, as the case may be. So these are the things. But when they sat over and decided that this is a command tradition, then for me, I believe it can be challenged in court. Because tradition is different from law itself. Tradition is maybe convention, procedure, what normally happens. You might have a tradition that has been there for years or centuries, but at the end of the day, that tradition might become, repugnant to equity, good conscience, in the sense that it infringes on people's rights. So no matter how well, coordinated, no matter how old that particular tradition is, if it runs in grains with the laws of the land, then it becomes, something that must be, brought down. So I would advise, the four of them, especially Jitubo. Jitubo has been a very outspoken, officer, a very good one for that matter. They should go to court and challenge this retirement, at least to let the court decide whether the Police Service Commission has such powers, to forcefully retire, DIGs, because they want to appoint one of them. It's been there for decades, but I don't think it's proper. That's my take on this.
All right. We hope that, like I said earlier, this is somehow given a human face.
Yes.
And I think that's the only way it becomes okay. Because at the point when they refuse to go,
yes,
and you're not forcing them to go, that clearly shows some form of rebellion.
Yes.
And then why is that rebellion there? Because someone feels that their rights is being denied.
That's right.
Like I said, if you look at them, most of them are not up to 65, clearly.
Absolutely, yes.
And then if they're not, you're taking years away from them. So what are you giving back to them? Is it just by saying it's tradition? And then because it's tradition, what about their rights as individuals? And again, why not make it okay for them to actually retire? I mean, do something that makes it okay. But like you said, maybe they should go to court and challenge it.
Yeah, they have to do that, yes.
They give it a human face or maybe reverse that said tradition. But let's get into Bayelsa State.
Yes.
House of Representatives members from Bayelsa State have condemned the killings, indiscriminate arrest and detention of Opundembe Basambari youths by the Nigerian police in Bayelsa State. Now, the caucus says the invasion of Opundembe, that's Basambari, on the 12th of August 2023 by men of the Nigerian police force was in Gestapo fashion. They noted that the attack was politically motivated and targeted at destroying the peace and the prosperity brought by the administration of His Excellency Senator Doye Diri to Bayelsa State, which is currently enjoyed by all Bayelsans. Now, the caucus led by Honorable Mari Ebikake, representing by Brass Nembe Ijo Federal Constituency of the state, however, commended the governor of the state for his efforts in diluting the tension in the affected community. The lawmakers called for the setting up of a commission of inquiry to determine the root cause of the crisis and the actions of the police special forces deployed to the state by the IGP and prefer a permanent solution to these unfortunate incidents. We'll bring you the reports and come back to you.
The immediate response of the Bayelsa State government, led by His Excellency Senator Doye Diri, to the crisis and the effort to dilute the tension in the affected community. The raid caused death of innocent citizens and indiscriminate arrest and detention of scores of Opundembe Bassambri youths who are presently in the custody of the Nigerian police at Abuja. May we also remind the IGP, Inspector General of Police, that a sting operation of such nature carried out in total disregard of existing protocols with regards to the role of the executive governor as the chief security officer of the state within his domain in the clear absence of imminent threat to national security is not only a threat to our democracy, but raises questions of the presence of the Joint Security Task Force stationed in the community over the years. We employed the Commission of Inquiry set up in the aftermath of the incident to determine the root cause of the crisis and proffer a permanent solution to these unfortunate incidents in Opunembe, Bassambri. We want to use this opportunity to call on the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, to, as a matter of urgency, empanel a high-powered commission of inquiry on the immediate and remote causes, including the role of the Nigerian police, particularly the SWAT department, their source of funding, and other individuals who played roles in the armed invasion to ensure the perpetrators are fished out and made to face the wrath of the law. This will not only act as deterrent, but also send a message to individuals with selfish agenda not to tarnish the image of your government and the democratic reputation you have brought into governance. We also want to use this medium to offer our heartfelt condolences to the families of those killed in the unfortunate incident and call all sons and daughters of Nembe Kingdom to please remain calm and allow peace to reign in the kingdom.
All right, welcome back. Now, let's talk about this particular incident and its impact to the brass or Nembe Kingdom. Now, you recall that when the governorship candidate, Timothy Silva, visited the president, and coming back after that meeting, we learned that he told his people that the president is going to send the police force to ABCD, and the several Bayelstans called on the president to say, please, what we learned that Silva told these women who are rejoicing over a plea, that should not be the case. One peace in Bias. And then subsequently the police was released. And of course the issues from his birthday and the arrest of our abduction of a particular politician, all of this has cascaded to where we are today talking about this. Now the rep members are basically saying, the police are killing our youth and we need this to stop. But how much impact do you think this is going to make, given their position as it is?
I don't think it's going to make a lot of impact because the extrajudicial killings by the Nigerian police, has been frowned at, for decades now. Yeah. And nothing has been done. The Nigerian police or security forces in Nigeria, as we call them, are very brutal at times when it comes to handling matters that involve civilians. We all know what has happened before now. We have the Zaki Biam incident during the Obasanjo time when soldiers overran, a small community called Zaki Biam in Benue State. Mm-hmm. And we also remember, similarly, a particular case of Oji. Mm-hmm. Where government soldiers, troops, overran another community, as the case may be. And even during the Abacha regime, remember when troops overran the Ogonis, Kingdom, etc., as the case may be. So we've had a series of this kind of indecent acts and killings, arbitrary killings, by security forces in Nigeria, and now the police. And most times you see when policemen also innocently, they shoot innocent citizens down on the street, and nothing has been done. Panels have been set up, inquiries have been made, but resolutions come out. They don't even implement those resolutions. So this particular one that happened in Bayelsa State, I wouldn't know why, the IG will send a special force, to a particular community to go and eliminate people and kill people. Whereas, you know, under our Constitution, Section 33 says that, you know, nobody is entitled to take another's life except by an order of a constituted authority like a court. Is it that they have the orders of a court, you know, to go or move into that particular community and begin to unleash mayhem, bloodshed, and even killing, as the case may be? See, what we need to do is to rise up against these people civilly and, you know, kind of put it to them. But waiting for, you know, members of the House of Reps or House of Assembly to come and, you know, I'm sure after this press conference they had now, no one will be heard again. Time will just go down and die natural death. So, well, the president should listen to them and act accordingly. The IG should listen to them also and act accordingly. That is what I will advise. But saying that whether this particular, you know, clarion call by the members of the House of Assembly will have any positive effect on what is going to happen, I bet you this is the last we may hear of this matter. Except maybe God have to, you know, decide to tackle this as the case may be. But it's very sad. You know, and condolences and sympathies to the families that lost their loved ones, you see. It's very wrong.
Okay, now let's look at this from another angle. The governor, over this same crisis in Punembe, decided to have a curfew. There's an ongoing curfew there right now, just to see how he can manage the ongoing situation. Now, with the curfew and the involvement of the police and what have you, on what grounds now, legally speaking, you've said that except by a court of competent jurisdiction, and that would have gone past through the proper prosecution process. Now, the police is meant to protect and all of that, but on what grounds were these orders given to the Nigerian police to do what they are doing in Nembe right now? With the curfew that the governor has put in place, are there no other way you think that this can be legally managed other than using arms on unarmed civilians? Again, but I'll just wrap that up still. As it is, do this family, the family of this will have a right to sue the Nigerian police over these actions, the killing of the youth of Bayelsa?
Of course, they do have, you know, very intrinsic and robust rights for them to sue the Nigerian police for the killings of their loved ones. Now, I want to refer Nigerians to a particular case that got to the Supreme Court. You know, it's called, you know, Ibikule, Adegboyega Ibikule against the state. It was a matter that was decided, I think, 2005, during the Obasanjo administration. Now, in that particular, you know, case, you know, that opened a vista for people whose family members or loved ones are hacked down, you know, by Nigeria police or any other security force at all, to approach the court to seek redress and remedies and possibly compensations for the loss of their family members or loved one. The Bikule case was well encapsulated and stated. In that particular case, you see, Onoege JSC, as he then was, because he has retired right now, he said clearly, and I want to quote him, he said that the security forces, especially the Nigeria police force, should know that they have two laws that they have to obey. That is the command law and the civil law, which is the Constitution. That when these two particular laws clash, that the constitutional law should prevail over the command laws. And that is the word they use while convicting, you know, Ibikule, you know, to death by hanging, you know, for killing one nonso in Asaba, you know, arbitrarily. Okay. So that has been a Supreme Court decided matter which has not been reversed. Therefore, if anybody is thinking, or any police officer is thinking, because whenever I have time to speak to the police, I always tell them in their cocoons, that is their barracks and their stations, I tell them that, let me tell you, we gave you this uniform, we bought these guns for you with our taxpayers' money. You are not supposed to be to hunt us down. You are supposed to protect us from being hunted down by criminals. But once you begin to do that, I will tell you that if you say it's your Oga or the CP or IG that gave you the orders to go and destroy, eliminate, cripple, maim, etc. as case may be, dismember people, member people, and all those things, that if you go to court, you'll be held personally liable. Because in that particular case, the Ibikunle who opened the salvos, or bullets, that it eliminated the Nonso in that staccato, was, trying to put up a defense. That the reason why he had to, shoot Nonso and kill him was because the command officer, who was their boss on that particular day of operation, asked him to open fire, and he obeyed the order, as they normally say in the command structure, obeyed the last command, and he did that, and he found out that Nonso was, murdered brutally and extrajudicially. So that cost Ibikunle his life. I don't know if he was, if that particular conviction or whatever was executed, as case may be, but even if it was not executed by hanging, I believe he should be in prison custody now, suffering and lamenting. So it's a lesson to all you people, police officers, security officers, to let you know that whatever you are doing, because you hang gun on your shoulders, you feel you are acting a movie. I want to tell you, you are not acting a movie. You are in a space and governed by law. Forget about your command law to say, my Oga said I should do that. When it comes to the final day of your crime, you pay for it. That is the only advice I have for them. As for the governor imposing curfew, of course, is to stem, further spread of violence. Because the community people cannot sit by and watch, people, in uniform coming to hack down, their members, arbitrarily, etc. as the case may be. They might be reprisal attacks as the case may be. So the governor has done very well, to impose a curfew, on that particular community, but let him do, very quickly and also lift it so that normal life can begin to reign supreme again in that community.
All right, thank you. And that's a good way to leave that off on that. Yesterday, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu directed ministers of the Federal Republic of Nigeria to act urgently to grow the economy, harness the human capital of the nation's youth population, ensure food security and health care development to alleviate the sufferings of Nigerians. This was disclosed during the inaugural council meeting where he rolled out the roadmap for the economy going forward and urged the new Federal Executive Council to evolve at developmental targets along the 8 priority areas of his renewed hope administration. The council also examined the president's 8-point agenda, including national security, economy, agriculture, power, oil and gas, transportation, education, healthcare, digital economy, women empowerment, and judicial reform, among others. What briefing State House correspondent after the meeting, the ministers who were led by the Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, unanimously assured that they are inspired by present dispositions and the impact of government will soon be evident across the entire nation. At the meeting where the Vice President, Senator Kashim Shettima, Secretary to the Government of the Federation, George Akume, Head of the Civil Service of the Federation, Folash Adeyemi Esam, National Security Advisor, Nuhu Ribadu, Chief of Staff to the President, Femi Gbajabiamila, among others. Now, recall that after confirmation of the appointment of the 45 ministers by the Senate, they were sworn in by President Tinubu on the 21st of August 2023. Since the swearing in the ministers had familiarized themselves with their ministries before yesterday's Federal Executive Council meeting. We'll bring you the reports now.
The expectation is high, and there's tough time right now. We must work hard, commit ourselves, and create a buoyant economy that will serve every Nigerian. Every Nigerian. We have from employment that is a level that is not acceptable. We are threatened by climate. The expectation is high, and there's tough time right now. We must work hard, commit ourselves, and create a buoyant economy that will serve every Nigerian. Every Nigerian. We have from unemployment that is a level that is not acceptable. We are threatened by climate changes. You still have underemployment. But to turn things around, you have been selected to perform your utmost best. The policy agenda will be set to reform the economy to deliver sustainable and inclusive growth, strengthen national security for peace and prosperity. Without security, there can be no investment. We must unlock the energy and natural resources of this country. We must start to produce for ourselves, dig ourselves out of the hole, focus on education, healthcare, make social investment that is essential for the development of our people. Our priority areas are defined in our economic programs. Every area is a priority, and you belong in the driver's position to realize and make that priority a fulfilling promise to the entire nation.
Examined the president's 8-point agenda, his 8 priority areas for moving the Nigerian economy forward and for delivering to Nigerians. And those are basically food security, ending poverty, economic growth and job creation, access to capital, particularly consumer credit, inclusivity in all its dimensions, particularly as regards youth and women, improving security, improving the playing field on which people and particularly companies operate, rule of law, and of course, fighting corruption.
So basically, that is it. We are all fired up as cabinet members. We have made our commitments to Mr. President, and I'm sure he's equally pleased with the kind of commitments that we have laid out today. And God willing, we should be able to achieve those targets within the shortest possible time. But one thing I must say is food security is what this administration of the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has spelled out to do, is to make sure, like I've earlier stated, that food is available, affordable.
And welcome back. This was yesterday, and now the president is tasking them on hard work and dedication, and they are promising to commit themselves to the Renewed Hope agenda, yes, which already have the 8 points of the Renewed Hope agenda. Now, one of the part of the Renewed Hope agenda is on the economy. Let's look at it from the angle of ease of doing business, laws and regulations when it comes to doing business in this country. Yesterday, we're talking about on the show the All Eyes on the Judiciary billboard and how Akon is saying that they will still, the company that produced it had apologized. Akon, they pulled it down. Akon is still saying that they're going to set up a panel and all of that. Well, this is just one out of many. We're talking about JSK leaving Nigeria and several other issues. Now, do you think that this government is prepared to actually nip issues around economic situation of this country in the bud? If you look at the announcement that has been made and all the issues on the ground right now, how prepared do you think these people are when it comes to hard work, dedication, and of course, ensuring that they deliver on the 8 points agenda of the Renewed Hope?
Well, I've made up my mind to say that I don't think they are serious until they prove otherwise to me, because of the fact that there's this particular saying, in my locality, that a chick that is going to turn to a cock will begin to show its characters and features at a very early age, as the case may be. That's a proverb in my place. Now, I don't know if these people, they have begun to show their character positively. Rather, it has become negative characteristics that I have been getting. You see, I was in a seminar the other day, and I was to speak on issues concerning the economy. I'm not an economist, but I informed that, see, for everybody that is aspiring to be a political officer in Nigeria, whether you are for the local government chairman, councillor, governor, minister, president, vice president, or anybody at all in power of authority politically, you have to go and read chapter 2 of the 19th Constitution. It should be like a Bible to you or a Quran to you. Or maybe it should be what they call daily manna, to you. If you begin to read it, the whole of that chapter 2, you will find out that the basic ingredients needed for you to be successful and the compass for you to govern and rule Nigeria are well encapsulated there. Now, if you look at that, you are going outside of that particular chapter 2, you can quickly correct yourself. Now, look at section 14 sub 2 says security and welfare. Now, you go to section 16. The whole of section 16 is talking about economic objective. Section 15 is talking about social objective, political objective, etc. objective of what government at all levels should do. Now, in this particular government, as we speak, economy is in shambles. I'm a layman, I don't know. But from what the feelers I'm getting is that economy is in shambles. Now, why is the economy in shambles? The removal of the fuel subsidy, has placed a yoke on all our necks. Yesterday, personally speaking, me driving out to do just 2 kilometers, I had to buy fuel of 6,000 naira. As a man that does not work for government, I am not a politician. I don't have free money. I work for my money. And I had to buy fuel of 6,000 naira because my tank was showing red. I poured the fuel inside my tank. It was still showing red. So I was now wondering, how much fuel do I need to buy for it to leave that particular fuel to red zone to something, yellow zone? It is as the case may be. And when I calculated, I found that at least 20,000 naira to add to that 6,000 naira. How many of us can afford this? I left the filling station, disillusioned, and at the same time, feeling very quacky. I don't know exactly what I'm to do. So I went down, came back to the house, the same thing. Got back home, there was no electricity power for me to do whatever I want to do. Got back home, I had to pump my water. Got back home, we had to buy food stuff for my kids, etc. as case may be. Now, what is going on? The Naira is a wayward child right now in the international community of nations. The Naira has become a currency that is doing acrobatics and calisthenics before other currencies in the world. The economy of Nigeria, I checked yesterday. I said, let me look at the World Bank rating and other ratings, indexes that we use, to check and see how economic, growth is possible in countries in Africa and the world. I checked the World Bank rating in terms of economy. Nigeria was number 22nd. Even Seychelles in Africa, even Algeria was better than Nigeria. You look at a far-flung country like this country very close to Malawi, had a GDP that is even better than that. I was now wondering, and I said, what is all this thing? So why should Nigeria be number 22? On that index, among the top 30, I did not see Nigeria there. You know, these are things I feel so sad about.
Let's even look at government policies. One of the things that has been an Achilles heel when it comes to development or growth in governance, as the case may be, at least in Nigeria, have always been government policies and how these policies are not thoroughly worked before they are announced, and that have over time been an Achilles heel in the way we do things. And legally speaking, some of these policies that seem to be a hitch, create all kinds of hitch. Like you talked about removal of fuel subsidy. We saw the Naira redesign sometime last year, late last year, and its consequences. All of these are policies that have been thrown out there. For instance, we're also talking about palliative distribution right now. In the name of working hard and being dedicated to their duties, what are the ways you think that, if you're in position to advise this government when it comes to carrying the people along in policy announcements, what are some of the things you can actually suggest, considering all that we have had to go through?
What I will suggest is, first of all, to ameliorate poverty. The poverty rate in Nigeria is too high. I compared Nigeria to India. India was regarded as the capital of poverty in the world some years back.
Yeah.
But they have left that particular, zone now and handed over the baton to Nigeria. Nigeria now is the poverty capital of the world. And I am worried. If my leaders are not worried, then I think there's a problem. Now, talking about policy, I believe that the policies that government have are just like the insurance policies that we carry about with our cars that are no policies. Now, I have an insurance policy in my car, which I procured for some amount of money. But if an accident occurs to a third party, they will not even come to my aid. I have to use my money, to repair my car and repair the other person's car, as case may be. Whereas the insurance is supposed to take that cushion and take that particular decision from and cushion the effect that it would have had on me, as the case may be. So the policy of government is just like the insurance policies we normally have in our vehicle particulars that you can procure anywhere you go to, carry it, but to pay, but they are not effective. Now, look at it. How can a government, for instance, begin to talk about removal of, subsidy, which is a government policy we all supported. And there is no policy, for amelioration, remediation of situations, as the case may be. For instance, if you remove the fuel subsidy, what are you supposed to do right now is to work on, you have a policy that will talk about, repairing all the refineries. Since you cannot build, since you have become a lazy man that wants to stay in the house the father built about a century ago, you don't want to build your own as a country, then repair the one that your father left for you. Now, Nigeria does not want to repair that particular one. They left it. Because if we have those refineries repaired, I am telling you that we'll stop importation of fuel, or if not eliminate it, at least we'll reduce to about 10% importation, as the case may be. And the Naira also has to work. Look at the Naira policies or the policies of government that has been brought into play. Now, let me tell you, there was a dual policy that was being operated by the Central Bank of Nigeria in the last dispensation. But this present administration brought to what they call unitary, one single policy of Naira exchange. It has failed so far. Why can't you reverse or revert to the other old one that at least work to a level that we could understand? That has not taken place. Now, you have what they call National Policy, a council that normally turn out these policies for Nigeria. How far have they gone? The policy on transportation, what has happened? That, for instance, you say you want to give palliatives, which is a demeaning word, for a state, a petrodollar state like Nigeria, to say you want to give palliatives to its citizens, whereas we are not in a state of war or natural disaster. And in a situation like this, you want to give palliatives instead of welfare packages. So it becomes a problem for me to understand why that should be. Transportation is not there. There should be a policy, amendment on transportation. For instance, if you bring in, mass transit buses to Nigerians to ameliorate our transport, whatever, I can even park my car, at home and begin to follow that bus from point A to point B to go and do some other things. There are so many of them that, time will not allow me to maybe explain. Right. But I believe that the policies they have right now have not been effective. And I want to rejig them and rethink them for the benefit of Nigerians.
All right, thank you very much. Before we get into one of the trendiest conversation this morning, just so you know, while the president is saying he wants his minister to work hard and be dedicated to their duty, we'd just like to remind them, as at today, the World Bank clock on poverty report says that 71 million Nigerians are poor. That's why we are the world poverty capital for 2023. And they also remember that according to the National Bureau of Statistics, their data says that 133 million Nigerians are multidimensionally poor. So if you sum all of this up, your guess is as good as mine as what we are looking at. So we wish the minister the very best. But now, let's talk about a 7-Corps member who is a minister. The controversy surrounding the appointment of the National Youth Service Corps member as Minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria have seen several interpretations, even by senior advocates of Nigeria, where the minister herself said there was no law banning her from, allegedly said there was no law banning her from taking ministerial responsibility as a 7-Corps member. However, is the Supreme Court's judgment, there is a reading of the Supreme Court judgment on a related issue, and this is in the case of Modibo versus Usman and ORS in 2019. Well, in this case, the appellant contested and won election into the House of Representatives while he was undergoing the National Youth Service. The Federal High Court then ruled that a Youth Corps member was not qualified to contest election in Nigeria. The Court of Appeal set aside the judgment on the ground that a Youth Corps member is not constitutionally disqualified for contesting election, but the Supreme Court held that the Court of Appeal erred in law and proceeded to affirm the decision of the trial court. In the leading judgment of the Supreme Court in Modibo versus Usman, a Supreme Justice of the Supreme Court stated inter alia that it appears that the lower court had suggested quite obliquely that the appellant, an undoubtable NYC member and indeed an NYC member, could combine the full-time activities as a member of the House of Representatives. That, he said, Justice Eko said, that to him appears absurd, that the lower court failed to be guided by the overall public policy in the National Youth Service Act. He said neither the lower court nor the appellant satisfactorily addressed the points raised by the trial court and the first respondents cross-appellants that public policy under National Youth Service Corps scheme and the bylaw revised 2011 made pursuant to the NYC Act forbids a corps member from going into politics or holding a partisan political appointment. In his contribution to the leading judgment, Justice of the Supreme Court Okoro also had this to say on this same matter, that it is not in dispute that the appellant was still a 7-Corps member at the time he contested and won the primary election. Justice Okoro said this was a clear violation of Section 2, subsection 1 and 3 of the National Youth Service Corps Act and Section 44, subsection 9 of the National Youth Service Corps bylaws, as reversed in 2011. Justice Okoro said the court below was wrong, that's lower court, to suggest that the appellant could combine full-time activity as a member of the House of Representatives with his primary assignment as a corps member. He said that by virtue of Section 2 of the NYC Act, this is the second justice, everyone, a person called upon to serve in the service corps is under an obligation to serve for a continuous period of 1 year from the date specified in the call-up letter. It says Section 4, subsection 9 of the NYC bylaw, revised in 2000, provides as follows, that every member shall not take part in partisan politics. Any member who takes part in partisan politics is liable to extension of service for a period not less than 3 months without pay. He said by Section 13, subsection 1, 3, and 5 of the NYC, it is an offense not to make oneself available for the service for a continuous period of 1 year as prescribed in Section 2 of the Act. He went on to say that the section also prescribes punishment for an employer who, that is the one who appoints now or employs, aids or abates a corps member to contravene the provisions of the Act. He said it is instructive to note that the National Youth Service Corps decree has been validated by Section 315, subsection 5 of the 1999 Constitution. We'll look at that with the Constitution man after now. So the appellant could therefore not be eligible to contest the said primary election while still undergoing the compulsory one-year service period. The law will not allow the appellants in this appeal to benefit from this wrongful act. Well, having been proved to have contravened some provisions of the National Youth Service Act and bylaws, Justice of the Supreme Court Ogie said with the prison sentence hanging over his head, if he refuses to make himself available for his NYC, the appellant cannot be a member of the House of Representatives and Youth Corps member at the same time. Well, finally, in justifying the annulment of the election of the appellant, Abba AG, Justice of the Supreme Court also said thus, it is without dispute that the appellant has been a beneficiary of the federal government NYC allowance or salary as at the time he contested. He said partisan political involvement and participation, even to the level of occupying a political seat, is forbidden and prohibited by the law because every political position is a position of utmost trust and confidence, and the sole business and allegiance of a politician is the people who voted him into power and whom he represents, and that does not admit of jack of all trades but master of none. So he said to be a core member and a lawmaker at the same time cannot be. But because of our time, let me quickly come to this. Is quite a long read. Everyone, you can pick it up and look at that later. Barrister Adams.
Yes.
So yesterday we learned that the Minister Musawa said that there's no law banning her. But yes, she came back the day before yesterday. But yesterday she came back to say no. She didn't say that she was quoted out of context. Now, but some Supreme Court, some senior lawyers, not Supreme Court justices here, who just read out some of the things some Supreme Court justice said about it. Some Supreme Court senior lawyers, senior advocates of Nigeria, had different opinion. One was saying that she didn't break any law. I read that in the Leadership newspaper yesterday. The other one said that, oh, she can actually be appointed, that there's a difference between employment and appointment. That employment is one where you'll be paid. But appointment, that because she's a core member, the president or anybody can appoint her to serve anywhere, that what she's doing is also national service as a minister. So she's not entitled to her remuneration as a minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So when she's done, that's when she can begin to receive salary. So now, let's go from the last argument, because clearly from what the Supreme Court justice said, that's not obtainable. But let's go from the senior lawyer's argument that she can be there serving on appointments, but without ministerial salary. But when she's done, she can begin to receive the salary and what have you. Now, Britt, you're the Constitution man. Help us make better sense of all of these arguments.
All right, thank you very much. You see, first of all, the observations I have made in the arguments lawyers are putting forth, you know, are this. You know, this same Musawa was to serve in 2001.
Correct.
Good.
Correct.
And the NYC said she absconded. So 22 years after, she resurfaced. What did the NYC do to her? Because under the act that creates the NYC, what we call the NYC bylaw, there's punishment for absconding.
True.
Did they punish her? I'm asking the NYC. They did not.
Well, Ochono didn't tell us if they punished her.
But if they did, they would have told us, because the spokesperson for Enegwa, what we call the man, said that they will look into this particular and take proper action.
If they are disciplined.
You understand? What I'm asking is that the young lady did this 22 years ago, and she, you know, came back now. She wants to do the service. That is on one point. The second one is this: National Youth Service Corps, you know, ought to be for people who are from 0 to 30 years, as case may be. 22 years ago, does it mean she got at the age of 8 or thereabout to make it 30 years and she's still eligible to serve? That is one question I want to find out. Technically speaking.
In fact, no, I think on that, they take it from how old you were when you graduated.
When you graduated.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll ask her,
50,
yes. Yeah, you can come and serve.
Yeah.
All right, let's eliminate that. Now, let's take it.
But in this case, she has absconded.
Yes.
That there's a law. She broke the law.
She broke the law, yes. So she broke that law, and the punishment on record was not meted to her, except they prove otherwise. That is it. Number two is that the reason why you see this cacophony, of this animal diversion. Let me use the word, that animal diversion on this issue is because of the fact by lawyers. It's because of the fact that Section 147, sub 5, says that for anybody to qualify to become a minister in Nigeria, he must have the qualities and characteristics and precondition required for you to become a member of the House of Reps.
Okay.
That's what Section 147 says.
Okay.
Now, when you look at it, it said, for you to be qualified, to be nominated to be a minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, that you must possess the qualifications of somebody that wants to go to the House of Reps in an election. You understand the point? Now, that particular Section 147 sub 5 is indirectly or directly referring to Section 65, Section 66 of the 1999 Constitution that lay out pre-qualification that a man or a woman that wants to aspire to the House of Representatives in Nigeria lawmaking body must fulfill. And some of these conditions are, you must be a Nigerian by birth, you must belong to a political party, you must also be sponsored by that political party, and you must be of age of 30 years, and above etc. as the case may be. Then the final one is that you must possess the minimum school requirement of school certificate or its equivalent as the case may be. These are the preconditions listed out under Section 65 for those who want to, aspire to House of Reps. So indirectly and conversely put is that if you want to be a minister of the Federal Republic, then you must possess all these particular, preconditions and requirements for you to be a minister, as the case may be. Now, some lawyers have now said that under Section 66, you find that there are reasons why you may not qualify, to become a member of the House of Reps, if so facto as a minister, as the case may be. So now, this has been confused because in that section, the Section 147 that I said, I quoted, sub 5, 65, etc. as the case may be, does not state that you must possess, what they call an NYC certificate or a certificate, as the case may be. So that is where some lawyers and some other people with opinion are hinging the argument that she does not need to possess, that certificate, of discharge, whatever as they call it, from NYC.
No, but how do you explain the fact that she is a serving? Yes, there may not be a law that clearly states that she does not need to possess that.
Yes.
But there is a law that says that as a serving core member.
I was going to that. Now, that is the argument of lawyers. Now, the law itself now that says that as a serving core member, we have statute, which is constitution. We now have case law to back this one up, which is judgment of courts before now. Now, those lawyers are also say, let me start with the case laws that most lawyers have cited. In the Modibo case that was cited by some senior advocate, etc. as the case may be, that was for election. In the Adeosun case, that's suppose, in that Adeosun case, they said that you don't even need a certificate from NYC to be taken as a minister. So lawyers were citing that Adeosun case of last year. The Adeosun case, as I said to them, is incongruent with this particular, case that we have right now. Adeosun case, she was not a participant in the NYC. She was not a member of the NYSC.
She wasn't serving.
She was not serving. She was not serving as that last the time we had that certificate scandal. What people accused her of was, forgery of a discharge certificate, yeah, which ought to be a criminal, offense. So when the court now said that she does not need, an NYC discharge certificate before she can become a minister, that was, slightly understandable. But the court went further to say that as it is right now, she's not a serving, core member. We are looking at the issue of certificate forgery, as the case may be. Then, secondly, we now imputed to say that if a particular law says, for instance, that WAEC certificate is the minimum you need to require, if you go and upload or front load your PhD, degree, don't we have the right to question, that particular PhD degree you brought, as the case may be, even though the law says the minimum is school certificate? That is on that side.
You already presented it.
You already presented it, so we have the right to cross-examine you on that particular whatever. If you now say you are a youth corps member, we have the right to, look into the reason and why you are a youth corps member. Now, let me put this into perspective. Maybe this one will clear, the air. Why the bylaw of the NYSC as a law, has to be read in a community reading with the constitutional provision. They have to be put together. You have to read the two together, then you now make sense of it. Now, what that bylaw is saying is that if you are serving, you have to sacrifice that 1 year. You have to focus. There's no distraction. Do you know that you cannot even travel if you are in the camp, in NYC camp or service, without permission from the commander or whatever the case may be? You cannot even go abroad except to take permission, from the authority that gives that particular permission. There are still things you cannot do. You cannot go and do jobs outside that particular service that you are doing. Assuming you are posted to a bank, you will work in that particular bank. You are not expected to go and begin to work with another construction company, just to make ends meet. You are supposed to focus for that 12 months or thereabout that you are supposed to be there. And also, anything that has to do with political offices, you are not supposed to go close until you finish, that particular job and get your discharge certificate. That is on the side of whatever. Now, some lawyers were not saying that she cannot be discriminated against by virtue of her not possessing, a discharge certificate or a member of the youth corps. I want to say with due respect that, like a lawyer said, that the NYSC bylaw is subservient to the Constitution. I said that I disagree with that particular, assertion of that particular lawyer that said that since the NYSC, bylaw is subservient to the Nigerian Constitution, therefore the Constitution will take supreme. I want to refer that lawyer today to go and look at. You should go to section 42 of the 1999 Constitution, and I'll read it, yes, so that he will clear the doubts of that particular lawyer.
Okay.
And that particular section is talking that section 42 talks about the right to freedom from discrimination. That you cannot be discriminated against because you are serving in the NYSC, that you can't be a minister, etc. I said no. Go to that section 42, sub 3. He says, to tell you that the bylaw of the NYSC is sacrosanct and is a law that is in operation in Nigeria, and that you must obey it. Okay. Let me tell you why this is like that.
Okay.
He says, section 42, sub 3 says, nothing in subsection 1 of this section shall invalidate any law by reason only that the law imposes restriction with respect to the appointment of any person to any office under the state, or as a member of the armed forces of the Federation, or a member of the Nigerian Police Force, or to an office in the service of a body corporate established directly by any law in force in Nigeria.
And that's the NYSC.
That is the NYSC. So if the NYSC says you cannot, once you are in service, you cannot take any other appointment, be it political or otherwise, it means that the bylaw has a force of law that must be obeyed. By this particular subsection, he says that bylaw has restricted Musawa from becoming a minister of the Federation because of the fact that the bylaw being in operation and exercised and supported by Section 42, sub 3. Right. It means she has not been discriminated against, and nobody is trying to poo-poo her. We are saying that follow the law. That, madam, you cannot be a minister right now, as the case may be, until and unless you finish. In the Adiosu case, let me just round up this. The court, that case, the federal court in that particular Adiosu case said that by the time Adiosu was even invited to Nigeria to become a minister, she was not a Nigerian because she was even born outside. She was only born, outside of Nigeria. Yeah. Because what the constitution say by Section 65 is that Nigerian by birth. That is, you must have been born in Nigeria. So, as at that time, she was born in UK. Even though the parents are Nigerians that were born here. Though she's a citizen of Nigeria, but not born in Nigeria. So, as at that particular time, she can take up any appointment without having to undergo NYSC. There are children who were born in the US of Nigerian parents. They are not bound to, come and do their service here. But if you want to, have any employment, if you want to work in the government or private sector, you are bound to come and do that service here because it's the discharge certificate is a condition precedent, as the case may be. So this is my take on this. And I believe people should look at it, read all these particular, sections that, highlighted, that will make it known that I am saying directly to the government of the day that the woman Musawa is not qualified by way of the bylaws of the NYSC. Yes, the constitution is supreme, but Section 42 has reinforced the powers, giving powers of the bylaw on NYSC that it must be sacrosanct because limitations have been placed. Nobody can say she has been discriminated against, as some groups are saying, as the case may be. So these are things we have to look at.
Thank you very much.
I want to say,
you see what this is why I say you're the Constitution man, because you always bring the Constitution and just paint the right picture. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for answering these big questions.
Thank you so much.
From the senior advocates to justices of the Supreme Court, it's been all over the place. But thank you for the section of the what was that section?
Section 42, sub 3.
Good.
Yes.
I think that sums it all up. Let's quickly look at other things because of our time.
Yes.
Now, the Miyetti Allah Cartel Hall, Fulani Socio-Cultural Association, are expressing strong opposition against what they term the criminalization of herders' activities through the implementation of anti-open grazing law by some state governors. The group, in a communique after its 2023 annual general meeting jointly signed by the National President Alhaji Abdullahi Bello Bodajil, the National Secretary, Engineer Saleh Al-Hassan, and the National Deputy President, Communique Drafting Committee, and Basa Mansour Abdul Karim, held on Monday in Kaduna Nasarawa State written part. The said delegates unanimously endorsed the establishment of Miyetti Allah Vigilante nationwide to assist our security agencies in curbing criminality such as cattle rustling, kidnapping, and rural banditry. That the Inspector General of Police to take proactive measures to protect Fulani pastoralists across the country from tribal hordes, ethnic militias, and state-sponsored vigilante delegates are called for the settling of a National Truth and Reconciliation Commission to begin the process of the total reconciliation and national healing process in our rural communities. They said the security agencies to commence the process of detailed documentation of the violence against pastoralists, including the collection of exhibits and all relevant information to isolate the perpetrators of the violence, arrest and prosecute them to ensure justice. That the delegates condemn in totality all forms of violence and support the peace-loving people to embrace a spirit of brotherhood and peaceful and harmonious coexistence in our communities. The delegates said they totally condemn the continuous profiling of the Fulani race by some media organizations, particularly the social media, and urge the press to investigate the veracity of their stories before going to press or risk legal action. The delegates also frowned at the continuous extrajudicial killing of Fulani pastoralists by security agencies in the country and called on the National Human Rights Commission to investigate these atrocities and ensure that justice is served. They further resolved to continue to support the federal government's policies and programs aimed at addressing the challenges facing the livestock sector and appealed for inclusion in the renewed hope agenda of Mr. President. All right, let's leave all of that and come to the real issues. Yes. Well, they are appealing for alternative grazing zones. They're also appealing for investigation into killings. They are not happy that they are being profiled. Well, when it comes to profiling, I want to start from there by saying I totally agree. I don't know if all Fulanis are headers.
Yes.
Because all Fulanis are not headers. We have friends who are Fulanis, they're not headers. So this ethnic profiling by media organizations, I think we are all guilty of this and we need to stop. That's on one side. So let's not deliberate on that. But let's talk about the issues they are asking for. Having their own grazing zone. Appeal for their own grazing zone, their own legislation and everything when we're investigating the killings and all of that. But how much responsibility do you think they are willing to take to also ensure that the headers who are under them are properly managed over the issues that they are causing the harm, especially with farmer headers issue?
Well, I don't know. See, the point is this. Everything that has to do with, headers, all over the world. In Texas, you have those boys they call cowboys and things like that. They have heads that they go around. But you don't see them on the street with their cattle, etc. as the case may be. They have ranches, as the case may be. In Mexico, the same. Argentina, the same. You have those who live, pastoral lives, in some other African countries. In Senegal, the same way, we have these Fulanis here, the same way we have them in Senegal. But I don't think that this headers clashes is as pronounced and prominent as in Senegal, like in Nigeria presently, as the case may be. So that has been a worrisome development. I want to say with due respect that maybe if they had advocated for this before now, long before now, when the matter has not escalated, to this level, maybe many Nigerians would have had empathy or sympathy and begin to say, okay, let's accommodate them as the case may be now. But it's a volatile issue. It got to a point that the moment you see farmers, they are on their farms and they see a herd of cattle, very close to them, they begin to raise alarm and they become aggressive and they are apprehensive, as the case may be. So if you want to say you want to go and create, grazing zones, etc. for them now, I'm sure you are going to meet a very stiff opposition all over the country, as the case may be. So what government should do is this. The Fulanis are not, origins of a particular part of the country. They are moving, they move, they are just like travelers, pastoralists, they travel. So in their base, where we know they have them in those states, like in Sokoto, Kano, etc. and the rest, the government of this particular northeast, northwest region should be able to create, grazing zones for them in that area and bring their food from the south to come and give to them. That is my own thinking. If you bring them to the southeast or southwest, as the case, south, the people there will not give them very good reception, as the case may be. Because one, they will feel that you have come to use government instrument and land use act to reclaim their land and give to the Fulanis, as the case may be. And they say, okay, you want to perpetuate more violence again on them, as the case may be. So I don't think they deserve this special treatment. Secondly is that the particular trade they are into, this pastoral farming, etc. as the case may be, is more or less private business. It's more or less private business. I believe that it's not all governments in Nigeria that do have, ranches, etc. as the case may be. Those who do this pastoral living, etc. are private businessmen. Just like the Igbo men in Ikoku, Lagos, Alaba, Ladipo Market, and the rest of them, as the case may be. Just like the Yoruba people in Dugbe Market, etc., as the case in Ibadan. You understand? Just like the South man that has his, marketplace, Benin Market, Bayelsa Market, as the case may be. That does not, come to rely on government, for assistance of that particular nature. Now, if the pastoralists know that this is a private businessmen can go out and go and do their investment. You negotiate with people within your area, and you create your ranches there. Then we can be traveling to come and buy your whatever from that place. After all, Nigeria import beef all the way from Argentina. So if Nigeria can begin to import people from Argentina, Mexico, and even America or Israel, as the case may be, why can't we even travel to Kano or Sokoto to go and buy meat from you or cows and bring here to come and slaughter? Why you rear them in that your area there? It's a volatile issue. I do not think the government should give them this nod to carry on or maybe give them special preference or treatment. It's going to create more animosity in the country at this point in time.
All right, thank you very much. Let's quickly look at another issue on mass transit scheme. The government of Nigeria, the reps, as a matter of fact, uncovered some issues around the mass transit, and this is one very interesting conversation. So the House of Representatives ad hoc committee are set to investigate failure of federal mass transit schemes in Nigeria since 1999. They have decried the serial mismanagement of billions on urban mass transit schemes meant to address transportation challenges. The chairman of the ad hoc committee is Honorable Afam Victor Ogede. In a statement in Abuja on Monday, warned that the committee would get to the root of the mismanagement of the funds and that run into billions of naira put into the scheme by the successive governments without commensurate impact since 1999. Now, they said this becomes important, especially at this period of growing multifaceted economic challenges that have heightened the sufferings of the people and lowered the living conditions of many. Honorable Gene, who represents Obaru Federal Constituency in Anambra State and who is also the Labour Party caucus leader in the House, disclosed that in 2012 alone, over 16 billion naira was released through the Infrastructure Bank for the purchase of buses for public mass transit from the Subsidy Reinvestment and Empowerment Program, SHOPE funds, under the administration of former President Goodluck Jonathan from the Public Mass Transit Revolving Fund, PMTF. Now, he said a total of 1,779 vehicles were released to the beneficiaries under the scheme with a repayment plan covering 4 years. But according to the TIB, many of the beneficiaries defaulted and didn't repay the loans. For instance, he said the records show that as of December 2015, only 2 of the beneficiaries, ABC Transport PLC and the Young Shall Grow Transport Limited, liquidated their loans. Most of the beneficiaries are yet to pay as stipulated in the contractual agreement signed between them and TIB. He said perhaps because they see the funds as usual government bonanza, but this is where they get it wrong, because they can't be living large with our collective scarce resources while the people suffer as a result of poor mass transportation. The committee shall make the defaulters to account for every government money they have misapplied. All right, I'm very happy that they're having this conversation, because when the palliative was announced at them, one of the conversations that came out from that was that the federal government was going to go into another mass transit scheme. And I said, come on, you have done this over time. It failed completely. And now this is the result. But beyond that, states are already doing this. Why can't the federal government just leave it at that and begin to think of something major? Put your energy in the refinery, for instance. But let's quickly come to this. Looking at this particular conversation now, what do you think going back to root out all of this will do for us in terms of government's interest in floating a new mass transit scheme at the federal level?
Well,
if you look at how much this failed.
Well, you see, there's this misconception in Nigeria when you talk about mass transit. People just, normally run to buses and say, boss, they have to buy buses, etc., as the case may be. Mass transit is not only, carried out by buses, but by train, railway trains, city trains, within the city. I see no reason why some of the states in Nigeria, should not complement bus transport by rail transport, as the case may be. The rail transport need not begin to go from here to interstate, but let it be intrastate, where I'm in this area now, I can go to Obibo, using the rail and the train, which is another form. Once you have that one, you have the buses, you now have private owners who have their keke and PPTC. It will solve a lot of problems. A good example is that of India. India has a population of 1.2 billion people, as the case may be. But you wonder how they mass transit these people on a daily basis on transportation. There's an organized, system which they do. That is how it is done. Nigerians should look, or think out of the box, especially our leaders. You look at what has gone on now, they say 16 billion or thereabout has been sent or spent in acquiring buses that, those who got the loan, as the case may be, have not redeemed, their pledge etc. What is supposed to be done in that aspect? Is it not for you as an institution to go about, recovery those loans? That is why we say, it was Obama that said that Africa has, Nigeria especially has, very weak institutions, but strong personalities. Now, as the case may be now, maybe when you give out of 16 billion to very strong, men who are in the business of transportation, and like they mentioned some names, and you give to them, you cannot go and begin to challenge them because the personality of people involved in those businesses, which is very wrong. So it's a very bad, feeling that I believe that you cannot go and recover your loans from people you gave the loans to. It's killing the mass transit system. Please go out and do that. Think of other alternatives, as the case may be, to bus, transportation. I know bus transportation is quicker, faster, etc. to deploy, as the case may be, to take people from point A to point B. But as that is being done, also think of the rail system within your state. Every state in Nigeria here should have a rail system. I have seen a situation where you find out that within the city, you have about 3, 4, 5 rail systems operating in a state, and people there use that thing and eases transportation, bottlenecks and problems, as the case may be. I can't say further more on this more than what I've just admonished.
Okay, so basically, you think that it shouldn't mass transit shouldn't just be for the federal government. But haven't seen how the federal government failed in managing this when it comes to, because you're particularly talking about buses here now. Do you think that the federal government should also go back to investing in buses? Why don't they just maybe concentrate on managing the train, for instance, to help with the logistics and what have you, or even human, not just cargo now, but human logistics, and have the states concentrate on seeing that the states are already on it?
But see, the point is, the federal government, for me, has no business, managing bus transport system in the states of Nigeria. It is the duty of the local governments. Okay. The local government should be the ones managing these mass transit buses, as the case may be. We have 23 local government areas in Rivers State, for instance. All the 23 local government areas government should, create an enabling environment, give them the support in terms of finance for them to deploy and begin to buy buses, then begin to operate. Because most of the buses bought by the federal government, you find them only in Abuja and maybe cities like Lagos. They might not get to the local government areas where it is needed, as the case may be. But if you say, okay, we have about 500 billion, naira, for mass transit. Let all local governments, 774 local governments in Nigeria, come with a master plan on how they are going to operate it, so that it will get to the grassroots as the case may be. Then you deploy that money and let them begin to have. Even Biakpo have their own system, Faga have their own system, Abua have their own transport system, etc. on that local government. Even without the state having any control over it, I think it will be better, more spread than this federal government, whatever. The federal government has too much on its bag. The baggage is there are too many. That is why they seem not to be doing anything when we have issues like this. The federal government responsibility should be made lighter. Transportation should be a thing that should be for the local governments that will operate it. Even electricity should be for states. Federal government will only support and make enabling environment to happen. Agriculture, the federal government can come in to also support. Whereas the states and local government and towns are the areas where you grow this particular product, as the case may be. Security, the same thing. So when you now put everything in one basket for a particular set of government, then you are having so many things. That is why you see so many ministers, about 48, 50 now, as the case may be, because the burden is too much on them. So the ministers ought not to be more than a certain number, very important areas, as the case may be. It's not everything you must put your pie or put your hand into. So I encourage the federal government to work out a policy statement that we encourage local participation by local governments into mass transit, as the case may be.
All right, thank you very much. Let's quickly run through, sorry about that, our last story for this morning. The People's Democratic Party says the economic policies of President Tinubu are creating disconnection between the federal government and the citizens. The PDP said this in a statement by its National Publicity Secretary, Mr. Debo Ologunagba, in Abuja yesterday. Ologunagba questioned the sensitivity the statement well, he faulted the government palliative on fuel subsidy removal, especially the distribution of an average of 1,200 bags of rice to Nigerians in each state of the country. Well, the PDP, in a statement by its National Publicity Secretary, Mr. Debo Ologunagba, in Abuja on Monday, questioned the sensitivity of the government toward well-being of Nigerians, especially on the removal of fuel subsidies and floating of the naira. He said that the policies had resulted in an unbearable high cost of living, crippled national productivity, crashed millions of businesses, and sparked massive job loss with attendant escalated poverty, hunger, insecurity, and hopelessness in the country. He said the situation has snowballed into a dangerous loss of investors' confidence, with international companies exiting our national and leaving Nigerians stranded in the labor market. He said this has a crippling effect on small and medium enterprises, which are the real drivers of our national economy. Ologunagba maintained that the last 2 months of over 150 million Nigerians could no longer afford daily meals, with families going to bed on empty stomach. I don't know how he got that statistics. He faulted the government's palliative fuel subsidy removal, especially the distribution of an average of 1,200 bags of rice to Nigerians in each state of the country, saying it was inadequate. I don't know how he got this figure of 150 million Nigerians going to bed hungry. Is it in line with World Bank saying, poverty clock saying that 71 million Nigerians are poor in time, and then maybe we are the world capital poverty, and the National Bureau of Statistics saying that 133 million. Didn't add that or subtract? How did that figure come about?
You know, in Nigeria, yeah, we bandy figures the way we like. That if you ask the Nigerian people, say, how many are we population-wise? So we say 250. So we say 180. Now, so we say we are even going to 400 million people. Okay, as the case will be. So,
in all seriousness, do you think that is actually this the APC or Tinubu's policy that is crippling Nigeria?
Well, I think the APC government right from 1999. You know, because I will not just the APC government right from 2015 has not really done much, especially from that 2019 to 2023. You know, they really dismembered the country called Nigeria. You know, if you remember what happened during the last dispensation, the administration of Buhari, you found that Nigerians were gnashing their teeth. Nigerians were unhappy. In fact, things were so difficult. Economic voodooism, was introduced, that they mismanaged the economy to a point that we didn't know what was going on. Nigeria as a nation borrowed trillions of naira or equivalent from World Bank, borrowed from China, and we found that the national reserve, foreign reserve, was depleted, and it was hemorrhaging. So the same thing is now happening. So it has been a thing right from 2015, particularly 2019, to this particular time that we are right now, that these Nigerian people will be lamenting. See, if we have the situation of the Israelites, if we had the Red Sea, and we had a God, that like the Israelites did in the Bible days, that says that let my people go, and we had the Red Sea, I'm very sure by now we would have been calling on Moses to take us out of Nigeria to the promised land, crossing the Red Sea to wherever we don't know. Let me tell you with due respect, a lot of Nigerians are selling their properties and running out of this country. Many Nigerians right now, in the property market, you see buildings properties that ought not to be disposed of at very cheap rate like that, you find that Nigerians are disposing of them because if you ask them what they want to do, they say they want to travel abroad because the country is a difficult place for them to stay. They can no longer stay in Nigeria here. It is so palpable. So, and I don't know what the particular government is doing. We were being patient to see, the policies, direction that this Tinubu government will bring before Nigerians. We were patient. Even when it was not declared the winner, we said, okay, let us see whether it's going to be a new beginning for Nigeria, as the case may be, and let us see whether the Nigerian economy will be better in a few months' time. Before we knew what was happening, the fuel subsidy removal, was done. We are not saying that he ought not to remove the fuel subsidy. Of course, we have clamored if they say that the fuel subsidy is a criminal contraption, therefore, take it off. But let us have something underneath so that when you yank it off, we now have what to fall back on and that can cushion the effect of that harsh whatever equitably. Right. That has not been done. So I think to an extent I agree with what the spokesperson of PDP has said. All right.
It's always heartwarming to know that you're on the show. Thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you very much.
Adam.
Thank you. God bless you.
Hosting you today.
Yes,
Thank
God
you.
bless you.
That's been our show, everyone. Now, if you miss any part of the conversation, not to worry, we got you covered. All you need to do is just check our Facebook and YouTube, and you have a full show, and then watch. Let's get to have your feedback. But if you need to run and you need to stay on Atlantic Television Network, all you need to do is download our app, ATN Live, if you've not done that, or just log on if you've done that and watch the rest of our shows. Also, you can watch us live on our website, atlanticnetwork.tv. Or stay on our Facebook and YouTube pages and you get all the notification that you need. You can always watch us live on the go. We look forward to hearing from you. Do well to follow us on our other social media platforms. On X, we're Atlantic TV Net. On Instagram and TikTok, we're Atlantic TV Network 1. Do remember that peace and unity are the pathway to progress. Enjoy the rest of your day.